If I kindly ask everyone to gather a seat, we're not going to start until promptly 2 p.m. because we're going to be online. However, we want to be ready. So I'd like to ask the grandchildren to come by the hearse to serve as pallbearers. And then anyone who's here, just come forward, underneath the canopy. If you have not taken a moment to sign the register, do that. Bruce, if you want to be seated. And what we'll do is we're going to do the military honors first, and then we'll do the other ceremony of Kriya, and then the funeral ceremony.
I'm introducing you to my family. Thank you for being here.
Can't tell by his cheeks.
Well, it's so easy to. What a love.
You should maybe be falling asleep soon, but
I'll try to be boring.
Your music will not put any under. I bet you know a lullaby. Thanks. What'd you say? Right. The grandchildren are here. I know one of them just went to Israel last week. He was at services, and then she said he was leaving the next day for Israel. That happened with Michael for Uncle Sanders. Mark doing the service?
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we're going to begin the funeral services of Mr. Chester S. Pomeranz. We are humbled and honored to have the United States representatives, the Army from Honor Guard, Dr. Mark Slutsky and Cantor David Landau from Eitz Chaim, the Center for Jewish Living, will be officiating. First ceremony we'll do, though, is military honors. Then Dr. Slutsky and Cantor Landau will perform the ceremony of Kriya. Then we'll begin the funeral ceremony. For those of you who are online, we welcome you. And for those of you who are here, please take a moment to be sure that your cell phones have been turned off. There are some seats over here. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. Take advantage of the seats. Also, there's water here. We have water by the corner of the canopy. Typically, one doesn't eat or drink in front of the deceased, but under the idea of pikuach nefesh, of taking care of oneself, it's okay to drink. Anybody have one of these? You all have one of these?
behalf of the President of the United States, the U.S. Army, and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of appreciation for your loved one's honorable and faithful service.
Thank you.
Once again, we'd like to thank the Honor Guard from the United States Army. This time, Dr. Mark Slutsky and Cantor David Landau will perform the ceremony of Kriya, then we'll begin the funeral ceremony.
There's one thing I know about you as a family. There's one thing I know about you as a family. You think ahead, you prepare, you incorporate, you adjust, and you make sure to be strong and solid as you face every challenge. And that, in a sense, brings us to this moment where no matter how much preparation and no matter how much logic, there is a change and a loss and a shift that breaks through every defense and every plan and every goal. Things are not the same. And traditionally, there was a moment of expressing it, of tearing a garment, of saying, my heart is torn. It won't be the same. It's different. And no matter what I do, that's what I live with. Everything else we do in the rest of life is to repair that tear, to build that tear, incorporating everything that we gained from the life, the experience, the years, the range of things. And we rebuild on that after this moment of realizing that there is nothing we can do to prepare and nothing we can do that will take from us that harsh, changed loss. The smile will not be, the words will not be, but the memories will be. And that process is what we're tearing today to symbolize it, and that's the process we begin. So the words of the liturgy that say to us we're part of something bigger than this moment we feel ourselves. And if you repeat after me as you tear the ribbon.
Can we start further? I'll start with this. You want to do the shirt too? I'll do this. Here. Okay.
And together the words, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech olam, Dayan ha'emet, Adonai natan, V'Adonai lakach, Yehi shem, Adonai mivarach.
And he'll reply, Baruch, Dayan, Ha'emet. Blessed is the true judge.
In our tradition, a personal event, a personal joy, a personal loss takes on an extra significance, an extra meaning, an extra power when it's tied with a holiday. We're here on the 4th of July, and to be mourning and honoring Chester Pomeranz on this day speaks to something that was so important for him. To be part of the greatest generation, to have fought in Europe, to have fought in Japan, to have been part of a society that collectively brought a country together to fight for and live values that he lived, thought, and treasured in so many ways of his life. perhaps nothing would have given him more joy than when the army officer of a guard that could not have served together in the army when he served a generation ago uttered those words on behalf of the President of the United States. And he knows that the President of the United States, who they were speaking of, is somebody for whom he cast proudly and happily his last vote. And that quality of is really the man we come together to honor today and to incorporate into our lives, our experiences. I know in hearing just a few stories about how his father delivered milk in a horse-drawn wagon reminds me of the stories my father told me. Working for a single company for decades is a story my father told me. Coming to Chicago and settling in this city and making a life here is a story I heard. His story in so many ways, we will learn, is unique, but his story in so many ways represented opportunity, hope, and personality that found its way both to adapt and to express his own feelings. The psalm we begin with, the psalm reminds us of two things. It reminds us, as he did, that there's a vulnerability in life, and also that there's a comfort that comes from that understanding. And there's a comfort that comes from knowing that though we all walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and each one of us at a moment like this remembers that people are vulnerable, no matter how full and no matter how long their life. But there are also the words that through the way we live our lives and through the connections we make, all of which are his story, we can go through with the minimum of fearing evil, with the maximum of feeling comfort from those around us and from our hope and from our optimism and from the ability through our thoughts, our experiences, and our relationships to be able to find comfort as we go through this journey. So David will lead us in the 23rd Psalm.
Thank you.
Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai rohi, lo echsar, bino deshe, yarbitzeni yamei menuchot yenachaleni, nafshi yeshovev, yancheni v'maglet tzedek, למען שמו גם כי אלך בגט צל מוות לא יירא רע כי אתה עמדי שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי תישנת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה, אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני, כל ימי חיי. ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
One of the joys at Eitz Chaim was when there were life's events in the Pomeranz family, and we celebrated them together. We shared stories, we told stories about experiences, and we shared the feelings of what the experiences meant and how they influenced us and how we influenced each other. So really, there can be nothing that facilitates the lifelong process of mourning and honors Chester at the same time as sharing and telling the stories of his importance, of his influence, of his experiences as they impacted us. So we'll begin with Fern.
I just want to share a few memories. Dad played a big part in our family's lives. He was always an active participant, whether taking us to numerous educational sites and events, or exposing us to new ideas, or taking us on celebratory trips. One of my favorite memories is when Dad drove my friend and me to the last Beatles concert in Chicago. He didn't want me to miss something that was very important to me at that time. Dad drove us there, waited until it was over, and drove 2 very excited kids home. I also remember the fun times we had at Cubs and Bulls games. Dad very much enjoyed sports. Standing in line for the Bulls ticket lottery in the Michael Jordan era was an amazing experience. Everyone in our family who was available would meet up at the ticket outlet so we could increase our chance for tickets. Dad enjoyed the excitement of the crowd and sharing with other waiting participants. One other memory is from just a few years ago, when Bruce, Miriam, and Benj were visiting. We went on the famous Chicago pizza tour, sampling some well-known and some not so well-known pizzas. The tour guide shared with us that Dad was the oldest person to ever go on the tour, and that he was going to tell that story on future tours. One of the pizza stops involved walking up a long, narrow staircase. We were concerned that this would be too challenging for Dad, but he said that it would not stop him and that he was ready for more pizza. Dad was a lifelong learner who cared about the world, which is something he passed on to us. He was proud of being a World War II veteran. He was always questioning and sharing in discussions, whether at Eitz Chaim or at the North Shore Senior Center. There are many wonderful things to remember. Thank you for coming and sharing with us.
Hi, I'm Abigail.
I'm Rachel.
And we are 2 of Bruce's children. Our 2 other siblings, Deborah and Ben, are both abroad right now, and unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions, are sad to not be here in person.
Grandpa was always making sure we are as happy as possible. He never hesitated to dive right into whatever we wanted to do. Each of us got to do an intergenerational elder hostel, a trip, with Grandma and Grandpa. Grandpa was ready to support any adventure we wanted to go on. When I said I wanted to go to circus camp, he was all in on circus camp. While on these trips, he was always attuned to our well-being while also wanting us to have maximum fun. So when I was 9 and wanted to eat potatoes for breakfast every morning at circus camp, he was supportive of this decision, but said that I also needed to eat 1 piece of melon for every potato. Achieving a balanced diet and the breakfast that I wanted. Grandpa fully engaged in whatever we were doing. At circus camp, he rode a full clown skit and could not wait to wear the wig and perform in front of family and friends.
For those who knew Grandpa, it was not at all surprising that he was really excited about circus camp, as he was known to be a jokester. He had a shtick that he consistently performed, always making us chuckle. In this sense, Grandpa was very predictable. We grandchildren could anticipate certain phrases or the direction of a conversation. For example, on any of our birthdays, we are guaranteed to hear a full, beautiful rendition of Happy Birthday as soon as Grandpa got on the phone. Whenever my family would come to visit, Grandpa would always tell us before we left. Now, if the pilot asks, tell them you want to fly east. And we would respond, yes, Grandpa, will do. With his grandchildren, Grandpa never failed to fully engage with us, to joke with us, to adventure with us, or to be enthused about whatever we wanted to do. He did this all with an inexhaustible happiness and while simultaneously ensuring that we got our range of nutrients and understood the cardinal directions. We will miss you, Grandpa.
Hi, I'm Yoni. I'm also Chester's grandkid. So when I was thinking on the plane here about my time with Grandpa, I guess the thing that came the most to mind to me was when he would take care of me when I was a little kid. Maybe because now I'm taking care of a little kid a lot of the time, which is a new-ish experience for me, but I still don't feel like I have the hang of it. And what really struck me was how tolerant Grandpa was of me doing terrible things or bad things and just sort of going with it. And here's an example. It's probably not the worst example, but it's bad, which is that Grandpa would just play game after game of life with me when I would cheat when I was a little kid. And it was probably completely obvious that I was cheating. And the fact that I remember it means I was old enough to know better. But nonetheless, he would just be patient enough to just go through this ritual with me over and over again. And I don't really know what he was thinking when allowing me to do that, but I've sort of discovered in my own parenting that I have a real permissive streak, which I feel like in some ways comes from Grandpa. And I guess if I were to say what it's about, how my first thing with my older son, who's 2, and so there's a lot of stuff he wants to do that's not great. And I think my first impulse always is to figure out if there's a way that he can do it, or to just sort of let him go with it. And I think for me, at least, I would say that that's about sort of letting him be who he is, being confident that even if what he's doing at this moment is not great, he'll figure it out, and what he will do in the future will be great, and trying to just sort of foster a sense of autonomy as much as a 2-year-old who wants autonomy can have it. And I think that's something I really take from Grandpa, is to just feel like it's going to be okay. You don't have to engage in moral correction all the time. And I feel like Grandpa is coming through in my parenting in that way. So that's the story I wanted to share.
My father was an unpretentious and humble man, yet passionate with strongly held values about right and wrong and what's important in life. Growing up in Indiana, the thought of locking the doors would have never crossed their minds, and going out to play with friends required no planning. It seems his family did not have a lot, but he was grateful for what they had and keenly aware that in this country there were many without work and without food. Meanwhile, seeds were planted for his passion and expertise as a gardener. Yes, Dad, pun intended. He spent many hours throughout his life gardening with incredible results and personal satisfaction and boundless zucchinis and tomatoes for anyone who would take them. He was a proud American, as we've heard, and grateful for the earth we are privileged to inhabit. He told incredible World War II stories. He initially, I think, did basic training in California, amphibious training, expecting then that would lead to going to Japan. And then his division, the 96th Division, ended up going to Europe, where they, moved across the continent, ultimately ending up in Germany at the end of the hostilities. Then returning to the U.S., where he was then shipped out to Japan, where he served for many months as well. He was always strongly committed to the environment, even 50 years ago when this was a less prevalent concern than it is today. I think when I was 7 years old, he was on the leadership council for SOAR. So he said he was taking me to the SOAR meeting, S-O-A-R. So I said, what's SOAR? So he explained, SOAR, Save Our American Resources, explained it to me what an acronym was, as well as the importance of environmental values. Hiking in Rocky Mountain National Park as a teenager with my mother and father. I remember we went on a hike and we stopped to rest, and I started, as a teenager would do, started throwing some pebbles down the side of the mountain when my father turned to me and said, "They did not create this national park for you to destroy it." My eye roll went from one side of the eye to the other side as I tried to explain to him that he was perhaps the most irrational creature in the universe. But, I did foster, go on to visit many national parks, and I think really that moment stayed with me and really elevated my respect for the park system and for nature and for the sanctity of the national world. He never hesitated to call out anyone who tried to pull this country in a direction that violated his core values, and would joyfully debate with anyone who felt he needed his guidance to appreciate the importance of just leaders and just policies. I think it was a couple years ago, he was 94, we were at the Lincoln Center Marriott, and I was sitting next to him, and then there was a woman on the other side who had never met, and they were chatting, and it came up that he was, I think, 94, and she couldn't believe it. And I heard him say, "Before I die," to this woman. And I'm thinking, I am leaning over, trying to listen in, what's he going to say? I mean, my father never had a bucket list or anything that I was aware of, but, what is going to say? "Before I die, I just want to see Trump elected out of office." And that was what it was about for him. So I think you were right, that, so when it came to family, his actions and behaviors always spoke volumes. Through thick and thin, and there were certainly some of both, my mother and father have truly been side by side in an incredible way for more than 70 years of marriage. As a father and grandfather, as we've heard, he was consistently all in, always ready to get down on the floor and perform any role to enhance the joy of a child or grandchild. Game time was a central ritual of my childhood, which I took for granted at the time, but I think a little bit like Yoni was saying, looking back on it as an adult, it's pretty remarkable. And the way this worked is after dinner, I would say, "Okay, Dad, what time's game time?" And he'd give me a time, 7:20. And, he never skipped a day, never canceled. 7:20 came, it was never, "Give me another 5 minutes." It was always very, very reliable, dependable. And, we got to the end, then he'd bring out the piece of paper, so we were playing Monopoly, and make 2 columns, CP and BP. And we would document everything as it was, who had which properties, which cards, how much money, where the pieces were, take 15, 20 minutes, put it away. Next day, take it all out, spend another 15, 20 minutes setting it up based on the notes, So it's all empirically accurate. It was really, really something. And, something else at the time that I really took for granted, looking back on it, is that my parents really, attended all my sports games as well. And certainly other stories that I've heard him tell, over and over again with great joy and pride. One was, Fern's story about the Beatles concert. I know it was a major event for your life. I could tell it was a major event for his, just to be able to facilitate you going to it. And another was, he took Jeff and his friends from Camp Vermont to the movie Oliver. Yeah, Ellen remembers. So, and this was after they did the play at camp in Hebrew. So he would just, I can't tell you how many times he talked about you guys, singing all the songs in Hebrew at the movie theater, and just the pride and joy with which he tells that story always moved me. And even Alice, our basset hound, knew that it was Dad who always had her back, and we really owed her longevity to. We heard about the intergenerational elder hostels, and those were really a central event. And as soon as the brochures came out, we'd get it in the mail, and he'd call every day. Did the kids, so if you guys had nothing else to do, right? Did the kids go through the elder hostel book? Which trip do they want to go on? And right, no limitations, no parameters as far as they were concerned. And also though our music tastes are very different. Yeah, the Happy Birthday was really, that's our favorite song for all of us from him. We get the calls, on any of our birthdays, and, we talk to Mom and get the birthday wishes. But the climax was when Dad would get on the phone, and I'll confess, I think we'd gather around, right? We'd put the phone on speaker, just waiting, and just with no inhibition, he would be shouting out, the Happy Birthday song, no musical ability, but all joy, and it was always incredible. he was really passionate and uncompromising around issues of fairness, justice, and social justice. And I do consistently see his influence on all the grandchildren, which is really beautiful. One of his World War II stories regards a situation where a fellow soldier wanted to buy something in Japan for $5, which was a lot of money at that time. And my father, gave him the $5, and the individual said, I'll mail it to you, after the war's over. And it was clear in the story that none of the other white soldiers would have even considered giving this money to this black soldier. And, after the war was over, he got it in the mail many months later. In terms of social justice, he was a leader, really, not a follower. As a Cub Master, which is a role he had for my brother and for me, being in charge of all the Cub Scouts. In the early 60s, for Jeff, he established a relationship with a Cub Master on the south side of Chicago of a black troop of Cub Scouts, and arranged for Jeff's troop to go from Skokie down to the south side to spend the day with this troop, which again, at that time, was really an unusual thing to do. And I asked him one time, the Skokie parents, how did they react to this? And he did say that, a lot of them were uncomfortable, and that there was one parent in particular who said, my child is not going to go spend the day with a black troop of Cub Scouts. And he said that he talked to her and he, explained to her, why it was important, why it was be a valuable experience, and she relented, and all the kids went. And then, I think Fern mentioned the Pinewood Derby stories. So Jeff and I and Nathan were all Pinewood Derby champions in the Cub Scouts because of his incredible expertise on how to make a winning car. So having done this, I was dead set on being a two-time winner, because that was pretty unusual. And then I found out that he had sent a letter to all the Cub Scouts with all the key strategies, putting weight in the back, graphite on the nails, sanding the wheels. And I said, Dad, what have you done? You've risked it all for me. And, and he explained to me that there is no greater virtue than when you can be helpful to another person. That supersedes everything else. And then, so I got smoked by Karl-Heinz Strasburger. lost my repeat championship, but I really, obviously, came away from that experience, like so many experiences, really a better person and really having learned many, many valuable lessons. Deborah, who's in Berlin, in Germany, she was recently recollecting that there was one time when Grandpa was really very stern with her, and it really kind of threw her because it was so out of character. And this is when they went to their elder hostel. Well, Deborah liked Harry Potter, so of course her elder hostel was going to London for Harry Potter. And it was time for the end of the trip. And I guess 9-year-old Deborah had made a friend there, but she was very shy, and she was hesitant to, go over and say goodbye. And she describes that Grandpa was very clear that they were not going anywhere until she went over to this friend and said a nice and proper goodbye, because human interactions and kindness to others was just not negotiable. And that was a line that couldn't be crossed. Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Father, chapter 4, verse 1, begins, Ben Zomer Omer, Ezehu Chacham, Halomed Mikol Adam. Who is wise? He who learns from every man, as it is said, from all who taught me have I gained understanding. Now, I remember thinking how uncanny it was whenever they would come back from an elder hostel trip. My father would tell me, the leader, the teachers, it was, world experts. We had the world expert in moss, pottery, history, whatever it was. And I just remember thinking, it's, I had this image that Nobel Prize winners competed to teach at elder hostel trips or something. And, at some point, I came to realize that from his vantage point, anyone who shared knowledge with him was really bestowing a gift and was worthy of just the utmost in respect and gratitude. And anybody who heard him speak about his senior center classes, it was certainly the same thing. And he was very loyal about, Steppenwolf Theater Company. He was following them when they were in the gymnasium of the Immaculate Conception Church, and John Malkovich was driving a Schechter, bus as a day job, and just loyal to them, start to finish. He loved to sweat, he loved to laugh, and didn't sweat the small stuff. Miriam and I were staying at my parents' house a few years ago, and all of a sudden, crash, and we just heard from the kitchen, the sound of glass just shattering everywhere. So we ran into the kitchen, and we see Dad surrounded by shards of mugs and ceramics everywhere, and we kind of gaped in horror. And then Dad kind of looked up and turned to us and said, "I never really liked those mugs anyways." So to this day, on our best days, when something breaks or some plan just goes to pieces, we reach in and try to find our inner Chester and sort of say, "You know what? We didn't really care about that or like that anyways." And, it brings us perspective and even a chance to laugh about how seriously we sometimes take things that really aren't that important in life. Returning to that verse in Pirkei Avot 4:1, having looked at it, I read it in its entirety. It's 4 lines. And it just struck me that it really could have been written about my father, as it really perfectly captures the essence of the life that he led. As I said, it begins, "Who is wise? He who learns from every man. As it is said, from all who taught me have I gained understanding. Who is mighty? He who subdues his evil inclination. As it is said, he that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that rules his spirit than he that takes a city. Who is rich? He who rejoices in his lot. As it is said, you shall enjoy the fruits of your labors, you shall be happy, and you shall prosper. You shall be happy in this world, and you shall prosper in the world to come. Who is he that is honored? He who honors his fellow human beings." My father was an unpretentious and humble man, yet passionate with strongly held values about what is right and wrong and what is important in life. His memory is truly a blessing.
Lower it. Okay. Lower it.
הסותמים חולו, יחוד רחב משפט, אל אמונה ונבל, צדיק ישר הוא. הסותמים בחופו, מיומה לא תפעל, השליט במטה ובמה, ממית ומחיה, מוריד שאול ויעל. עצו תמים בכל מעשה, מי יאמר אליו מה תעשה, העומר ועושה, חסד חינם לנו תעשה, ובזכות הנקד כזה, הקשיבה ועשה. צדיק בכל דרכיו עצו תמים, ערך אפיים ומלא רחמים, ומלא רחמים. חמלנה וחוסנה על אבות ובנים, כי לך אדון הסליחות והרחמים. צדיק אתה אדוני לעמית ולהחיות, אשר בידך פיקדון כל רוחות, חלילה לך זיכרוננו למחות, ויונה עיניך ברחמים, עלינו פקוחות, כי לך אדון הרחמים והסליחות. אדם אם בן שנה יהיה, או 1000 שנים יחיה, מה יתרון לו, כי לא היה יהיה. ברוך דיין האמת, ממית מחיה. ברוך הוא, כי אמת דינו משוטט הכל בינו, ומשלם לאדם חשבונו ודינו, והכל לשמו, הודיה ייתנו. ידענו אדוני כי צדק משפטך, תצדק בדברך, ותזכה בשפטך, ואין להר אחר מידת שפטך. צדיק אתה אדוני, וישר משפטך. דיין אמת, שופט צדק ואמת. ברוך דיין אמת, שכל משפטיו צדק ואמת. נפש כל חי בידיך, צדק מלא ימינך בידיך. רחם, רחם על פלטת צאן ידיך, ותאמר למלאך חרב ידיך. גדול העצה ורב העליליה, אשר עיניך פקוחות על כל דרכי בני אדם, לתת לאיש כדרכיו, וכפרי מעל עליו. להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי, ולא עוולת בו. אדוני נתן, ואדוני לקח, יהי שם אדוני מברך. והוא רחום, יכפר עוון ולא ישחית, והרבה לישיב אפו ולא יאיר, ולא יאיר כל חמתו.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, if you want to come forward to place earth into the grave, it's customary to place 3 measures of earth without handing the shovel from person to person. And then Dr. Slutsky and Cantor Landau will do the memorial prayer in the Kaddish. At the end, we'll do a shura, a double aisleway. The family will walk through. They will offer words of consolation. At this time, we have earth from Israel that will be placed into the grave. if you want to come forward.
Yehi Shalom Bechelech Shalva Be'amenotayich 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la 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 Ya la la la.
After you touch the shovels, I have some sanitizer, okay? You can come on either side of the mound. You want to cover, it's a little warm out here. So as soon as we get it covered, we'll do the cottage. The memorial prayer, then the cottage.
May the angels be with you. To your right, to your left, in front, behind. And God's presence always above and with you. B'Shem Adonai Elohi Yisrael Mimini Michael Mismoli Gavriel Umilefanai Uriel Mechorai Rifael Ve'al Roshi Shechi Harel Yaelai B'Shem Adonai Elohi Yisrael Mimini Michael Umismoli Gavriel Umilefanai Uriel Mechorai Rifael Ve'al Roshi Shechi Shechi Chamayim Libeh Nochach B'nei Adonai Shivchi Chamayim Libeh Nochach B'nei Adonai Shivchi Chamayim Libeh Nochach B'nei Adonai Shivchi Chamayim Libeh נוכח פני אדוני. הלל אני והוכיח, אני והוכיח. הלל אני והוכיח, אני והוכיח. עיני יורדה מים, כי רחוק ממני, מנחם משיב נפשי.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could focus your attention on the task at hand, we're going to put the rest of the earth in the grave. We kindly ask everyone to just come back underneath the canopy as Dr. Slutsky and Cantor Landau continue with the interment service. And then you can take time to visit with the family. But at this time, please just come back underneath the canopy and return to the decorum that we had before the burial.
We were privileged, very privileged at Eitz Chaim to be in a community with Chester Pomeranz. So much of what was said about the values that he lived, we all aspired to fulfill in our lives. And even though he wouldn't call himself a traditionally religious Jew, there were so many things that he did as a Jew that he saw in terms of his value, his way of treating people, his humility, and his intellectual curiosity that defined who he was and made him so valued in the community. One of the most interesting things which Bruce explained to me today that I didn't understand was when we would have scholars, Chester would ask a question. And when he asked the question, it started off with a very conventional point. And you think, and the scholar would think, this was just such an old man talking about, really wanting to make some statement about the world, the way it was, and the way he remembered it. And then, as the scholar didn't think much of it, the question deepened, and it thickened, and it got more precise. And all of a sudden, by the time he was through and asked the question, it was a very countercultural, perceived question that really got to the core of where the challenging point was. And when you described the integration of learning from everybody and still being humble. He really taught all of us, and he also taught the scholars how to respect people and understand where they could learn and they could find other people whom they should respect. And that's a lesson, and that's something about him that I've learned today that I was aware of but didn't appreciate the depth and the significance and the values that went behind him. We have one prayer in our tradition that links us. It's a memorial prayer that links us to those who have died. It's a prayer that says, the peace in the heavens that we want them to have, comes to the tzedakah, comes from the good deeds, comes from the way we live. The El Mole Rachamim prayer says that now he can no longer act in this world. But as we've seen already, we have the responsibility to act for him, to act as he would, to incorporate the way he would think, the questions he would ask, the values he would have, the kindness he would have, the unabashed joy that he would have at moments that were pure, and the subtly nuanced way he handled the more difficult moments. That's the kind of man who we honor, and that's the kind of man who we grow from knowing and incorporating in our lives, in our daily lives, and in the stories we tell and the way we go forward. So we'll all stay standing for the El Mole Rachamim prayer, and then it'll be followed by the Kaddish.
Emale Rachamim Shochen B'Meromim Hamitzei Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei Hashechina B'Malot Kedoshim Uthorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim et Nishmat Zusman ben Avraham Shehalach leolamo V'avuh Shebli neder niten tzedakah V'naseh tzedakah V'yad azkarat nishmato Began Eden nehe menuchato Lachen Bala Rachamim Yasirehu besete kenafav leolamim Pitzror Rachem et nishmato Adonai u'nachalato Yanuach b'shalom Yanuach b'shalom amishkavo V'nomar Amen.
Together. Yes, thou
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the services here at the cemetery. Shiva will continue at the Pomeranz residence at 1827 Clavey Road in Highland Park, Monday and Tuesday from 2 to 4 or 6 to 9. And also, we're doing something today, right? Or just Monday and Tuesday, 2 to 4, 6 to 9. And then at the Pomeranz residence at 107 Knickerbocker Road in Tenafly, New Jersey, that'll be Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Memorial contributions in his memory to the Eitz Chaim Center for Jewish Living or the North Shore Senior Center. At this time, and for those of you who are online, all that information you could find on our website. At this time, we'd like to invite everyone other than the immediate mourners wearing the kriya to form a shura over here, and Dr. Slutsky and Cantor Landau will lead everyone in the traditional words of consolation. So if we could have everyone just make a double aisle over here, that'd be appreciated. At this time, we are going to turn off the online portion.